welcome to Greetings from Beyond Radio, everyone. I'm your host, Rich Valdez. And as usual, we always have incredible guests, but this time around, I'm very happy to have my dear friend, brother on board. But before we go any further, you can listen to us and see us, hopefully, as well. But Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Music, Get Haunted Network, iHeart, Samsung podcasts, Listen Notes, Pandora, and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, wherever any Apple devices happen to be. These are our sponsors, and please take the time to actually look them up. They are an integral part as to how Greetings from Beyond Radio runs. So a little bit about my guest. Unfortunately, he's under a tornado watch, so I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. I don't want him having to run underneath a bed. No, actually, that'd be a bad thing. Don't run underneath a bed during a tornado. But I've known Bishop Long now for the better part of 14 years and been working with him for 14 years. I started off as an administrator with him for his, at that time, the Paranormal Clergy Institute. But Bishop James Long is actually one of the individuals that I have a great deal of respect for and have learned a great deal from. Also happens to be my mentor, one of three, but the last mentor that I had for demonology. He's been showcased on so many paranormally based shows on TV. I've lost count, including the last one, which was Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcist, of which him and I were privileged to be regular cast members of. So with no further ado, Bishop James Long, come on board.
Well, howdy.
How you doing?
Doing good. I just, I just watched a video on Facebook of a great big, huge, great white in the ocean, and then people want to know why I don't swim in the ocean. Look in the video on my Facebook channel, and you'll be able to find out why. No. I'm telling you, nope.
Jen, our producer, has this unnatural fear of sharks.
Oh, no, it's not unnatural. It's completely natural. That's anything that's bigger than you and dumber than you and has bigger teeth than you and can swallow you whole. That's a very smart fear. Yeah.
She always tells me, "Did you watch the movie Megalodon?" I did. I don't know about you, but I ain't going to test the waters.
No.
So, that's pretty much the end of our conversation there. And I'm like, come on, it's in the shoreline. Yeah. Okay. How many people get attacked more by the shore than they do out in the deep ocean? So that's true. Welcome to the show, Bishop. It's great to have you. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show because we always get into very, very interesting conversations. I already let our viewers know that you are under a tornado watch. So if you got to do what you got to do and get off, people will understand. If they don't, tough cookies.
That's right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's every time. I was saying earlier, every time there's a thunderstorm, they have to. It always tornado every single time. And I know it's not the meteorologist. It really is. I don't know if it's people call it global warming. I don't know what you want to call it, but I do know. Here's what I do know. I do know that in Kentucky, when I was a kid in 1820, in February, it was unbelievably cold. I mean, freezing cold. So cold that you couldn't go outside and wait, for the snow bus, for the school bus, because it was just too cold. You had to wait inside the house. And then when if it came around at 7 o'clock or 6:40, whatever, 6:45 in the morning, you went out at 6:40 or something like that. It was that bad. And I mean, we're talking freezing, dangerous cold in February. We now have tornadoes in February.
Well, it's technically we're in May now, but I'm surprised. I mean, even in Utah, there's been snowfall for the past 4 days. Go figure.
It is crazy. I don't know. I know there's a lot of debate on global warming and all that stuff, but still, something is very strange where Miss Wilma, as a matter of fact, Miss Wilma's brother, his house was completely destroyed in February by an F3 tornado.
I'm actually worried about Miss Wilma because
Yeah.
you said that it was happening more around her area.
Yeah,
So
I mean, she when I tell you she's terrified, I mean, we're talking extreme. I mean, it's like I think Miss Wilma's being terrified to storms is like my being terrified of great whites. I'm not swimming with great whites. It ain't gonna happen unless I want to go meet Jesus that day. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. When I see these great big fish with these great big teeth. And and people say, well, they're not on your menu until they bite you.
yeah, that's a different matter altogether.
No.
Big shout outs, by the way, from the chat room, from
Hi.
Becky Connor, Jenny Davis,
Hello
there. And Mr. Willie Windwalker Gibson. Great
Good
deal of
old
respect
Willie.
for the man.
Good old
I
Willie
love
Gibson.
Willie.
Yeah,
he's awesome. And as they start streaming in, I'll call them out. So you know, I need to, I remember when we were doing our roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
And there was a story that you were sharing. One I had actually never heard, and I found it to be rather fascinating. And this is just to set the tone. So this way we can segue into other things.
Yep.
You were talking about a case where there was believed demonic infestation going on in this individual's home. You had gone at least 6, 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you went, the situation just wouldn't get any better. One day, someone, your grandma, calls you over and says, James, and says, so have there been any changes to the land since they moved in? And you were like, I think you said something to the effect of, I'm not sure, but why don't you share that story and the end result and exactly what happened?
Oh, you know what? I just noticed something really cool. Sorry. I'm naturally blind, but I just noticed that I could actually stream this this show to my audience too. Did you know that?
Go for it.
Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yeah, see, I'm looking on the screen. It says stream this to your audience. So if you click on that stream, you can actually click on, if you use StreamYard, you can click on to the people that can actually watch it live there too.
I have no idea.
Isn't that pretty cool?
Does my producer need to do something?
No, I just got to push the buttons. It allows me to do the stream. That's pretty cool.
Push away.
Rich Valdez show. Well, there we go. That's pretty neat. I don't know. So I didn't know that. So
there you go. Now we know.
Okay, so
you had your blonde moment. Let's move on.
I'm telling you, that's pretty cool though. Actually, I can actually that's a really neat thing to know, is that you can actually stream it. Like right now, I'm streaming live on my platforms as well.
That's awesome.
See, that is pretty neat.
What's your platform? Because I use StreamYard. I know you use.
Well, I use StreamYard too. I use StreamYard to connect to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGREDB Radio, to Rumble. But when I saw that, it said stream it to your platform. So I'm actually streaming this live to both of my Facebook pages.
Hello.
Oh, so that's a neat.
James Long friends. Hi, I'm just Rich Valdez, his resident demonologist for his USS.
Pretty neat.
USOCC.
Pretty.
So, welcome to Greetings from Beyond Radio. And also, let's start over again. So, what did your grandmother have advice for you when it came to all these attempts of demonic infestation, doing the minor rite of exorcism, and just it didn't work?
Well, no, it didn't. The minor rite of exorcism did nothing at all. And she was Cherokee, and she had talked to me about elementals as well. And so she said, when you have the destruction of the habitat and you have the restoration of that particular habitat that has been destroyed, then the activity will actually decrease. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'll try anything at this point. I mean, if that's what it needs, that's what we'll do. So I told the family, I said, look, we have to restore the habitat you destroyed. I don't know if this is on Native American land. I don't know. But here's what I do know, that the minor rite of exorcism is not working. The activity is not decreasing. It's not increasing, which was pretty odd. I mean, considering the fact that it was violent activity. But once they restored the habitat, the activity stopped. So I can't argue with the results.
I remember the story well because I remember there was a few, I think it was trees and
Hmm.
bushes that had been removed, and you
Yep.
you told them replace them,
Yep.
and then, as you said, the activity stopped.
The,
So one of the most popular questions that I often get in email or any consultations, and just like you and myself, we get a gazillion cases a day. Um, Oftentimes, I have to ask them, "What is your faith?" Because that does matter. With Willie Windwalker in here, he would understand. In fact, he is part of the paranormal clergy. And one of the things that I appreciated so much when you asked me to be on the Paranormal Clergy Institute was the diversity that we had of just not Christian, but we catered to Native American. We would cater to any
yeah.
religion that would need help, because sometimes if you go into, let's say, a Jewish family's home, they don't believe in Christianity, and you're bringing in, the Christian faith, it's not going to work, because it's what they're putting energy into, what they're putting their faith into does not match with what we're bringing to the table. Have you found that to be, other than what you already explained, to be the case in other cases?
Well, I would actually say that it would work because it is through the name of Christ that has control over demonic entities. However, I also understand that if someone from a different denomination or a complete faith contacted me, then my first question would be, why are you contacting me if your faith is XYZ? So that would be my first, because I never want to uh, apostolize. I never want to go to an individual and force them to convert to my faith or shove my faith down anyone's lifestyle or throat,
Of
so to
course, of
speak. So
course.
what I would do is I need to say, okay, let's figure out what your faith is and kind of go from there. However, as a Christian, I do not call upon, and this is just from my perspective, I don't call upon any other source other than Christ. So for me, it is the name of Christ that expels demonic entities. But that's my faith. It's not. It's not the power of crystals. It's not the power of this. And not the power. It's the power of Christ.
Correct.
And so, because as the power of Christ compels you, I mean that it's in the right itself. So for me, I would be quite hesitant if someone, let's say, is a different faith and they contact me. And my first question would be, why are you contacting a
Right.
Christian exorcist, a Catholic exorcist, when in fact this is not your faith? So.
It makes sense. But like I stated earlier, I like the diversity that the
Mm,
paranormal clergy brings
yeah.
to the table. What you created, and I've continued, and thank you, by the way, for thinking of me and continuing that, is something that is not heard of nowadays. Nowadays, there seems to be a break away from faith. And one of the things, I was actually consulting with someone the other day, and they said, "I think it's a demon. I know it's a demon. In fact, I'm sure it's a demon." I said, "Hold on a second. So if you know it's a demon, you contacted me, I need to ask you this question, and I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm seriously asking you a question. If you are sure that it's demon, why are you contacting me and not the clergy right away?" So what they need to hear is confirmation that it is. But
Mm,
I also threw this into the mix, and I said, you do realize something. When we're children, we think it's the boogeyman. When we grow into adulthood, we now think it's demons. That's the usual thing. It's how we evolve into adulthood. Do you feel the same way that nowadays people have taken that same boogeyman concept and thrown it into the mix of it's a demon because of the influence that's out there through entertainment? Do you feel that's the case when often it's not?
well, I think there's far too many people playing demonologists that have not studied demonology or theology, that's not devoted their lives to this and understand that this is a calling from God, and they're spreading misinformation. And we know how difficult it is for anybody who's a paranormal investigator, or certainly a demonologist or clergy, knows how unbelievably challenging it is, first of all, to do the case itself. But then on top of that, you go to a place where the family is now convinced that they have a demonic entity that's present because somebody watched the television show, and now they're an expert in the demonology field. And of course, then they start saying, well, now you have a demon in your house. And it's almost impossible to convince themselves that they don't. Even when you debunk all the activity, they're so convinced and it could be because, a lot of people are charging and going into people's homes.
Yes.
And so people have invested their money. And so they don't want to admit that they were taken for granted, the fraud. And that happens all the time. And it's very frustrating. It's no matter how many times I've debunked cases, and I said, look, these things are happening because of this. It's not because there's a demon. Oh, no. This person who is a psychic said that there was a demon. Oh, good God. And if I had $1 for every psychic that says that a person is a demon, I'm telling you, I'd be richer than Donald Trump. But it was just, it is ridiculous how many times people go in. Oh, you have a demon. And then I'm thinking, well, where's your demon? Where did you receive your training? I mean, have you had any theological training whatsoever? None. So how can you have no theological training and yet you're a demonologist?
One question from the chat room from Nicole Gaspard. Why are people so quick to label it demon? Well, he already answered that question. There's way too many shows out there that are screaming demon. I call it screaming demon. And to be honest with you, I wish they would stop. I got a lot of hate. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of hate mail when the Legion of Exorcist came out. And I was like, oh, goodness gracious. Because me, I've always been very respectful of all faiths, minus one, of course. But it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Not every single religion out there is bad. I don't think there's any religion out there that can actually claim squeaky clean, but I was amazed. I had one person I've been friends with for some time now, witch, practitioner, white magic, and she was trashing me left and right. And I was like, good Lord, why? My story wasn't even about that. Your stories.
Doesn't sound like white magic to me.
Well, no, exactly. I was being blamed for it's like, guilty by association. So I'm here thinking to myself, how could I break it to her that, listen, if you're not practicing black magic, it's all in the intent. So what's your take on when it comes to just not witchcraft, when it comes to Santeria, when it comes to voodoo, hoodoo, all these other faiths that have the dark and the white side? Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on this?
Well, my opinion is people can believe whatever they want to believe, but I can also disagree. If they do not believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah, is the Son of God, is God incarnate, then I'm not going to agree with their beliefs. I'm just not. I'm not going to accept that belief. Now that doesn't mean that I can't be respectful of a person's belief, because I can. I mean, if someone wants to look at the moon and howl the moon and think that the moon is God, well, that's their right to believe that. I don't have to agree with it, and I don't. So I can certainly respect everyone's right to believe in what they wish to believe in, but I'm not going to also say that I support the right to believe and to deny that Christ is the Messiah, because that would actually be hypocritical. Exactly. Christ is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. He is God incarnate, and so I'm not going to apologize to anybody for it. And that comes from apologetics. On your faith, I have no problem defending my faith of Christianity. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's okay to worship crystals, because it's not. Now, if you want to do that, fine. I'm not going to worship crystals. I worship God. So that's I'm pretty strict about that. A lot of people may think that I'm ultra conservative. I don't care because as a Christian, I'm not going to apologize for my faith. But again, I also accept the fact that everyone has a right to believe in whatever they want to believe. That is their right. But I also have a right to disagree. And they have a right to disagree with me too.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a free country. Last time I checked.
Yep.
Okay. Because you never know, that could change at any time now. And I've always, it's even in the Constitution. It states freedom of religion. It doesn't state what religion. It states religion. Meaning you have the right to believe in whatever you want. Just like you stated, if you believe in howling at the moon and that's what you want to worship, have at. I agree 100%. Quick shout out to everybody coming in. Wow, they're all storming in. That button you pressed, Bishop Long. Thank you. To Nicole Gaspard. We have Kathy Corrigan. She says to me, God is real. Sorry. And so is Satan, as there's yin and yang. Patrick Scott.
Let me be cautious about that. Let me be very cautious. I
Yes.
see what you're saying about the yin and yang on the comment, and I agree with that. However, let's with the Book of Enoch, there's a lot of problems with the Book of Enoch. They were elevating basically demons to that of the deity status. So we have to be very, very careful about the yin and yang, because that implies that there is a good, there's an evil, they're both equal in power. So you have to be very careful with that type of mentality, because once you say that, then you're elevating Satan to the same status as God. So I understand the concept. God is good, devil is yeah, absolutely. But we have to be careful and cautious about putting at a parallel state that they're equal in power. So we have to be careful about that.
Also, a big shout out to Kenneth Torres. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, hello there. Yeah, that's right. I agree.
And also, you know what? I agree with you. You can't place God and Lucifer in the same status, because God created Lucifer.
That's right.
The last time I checked, I mean, what is this Frankenstein monster trying to kill Dr. Frankenstein? It ain't going to happen. According to scripture. And I believe in the same thing you believe in as well. I've accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. But we respect everyone's right to believe in what they want to believe in. The thing is, that doesn't mean that they need to bleed into us when it comes to that. Something that a lot of people don't really know about you, although unless they watch your show. Oh, thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that very much, sir. Please hit the button and follow along. We have these shows on, and this time I have one of my favorites, Bishop Long on. But there's something that I've noticed over the years that has not been emphasized as much as I feel it should have. You are like this huge not fan, but you're also a paranormal investigator at heart. You love paranormal investigating, and why is it that does the church still frown upon this as much as they did back in the day? Because I would think with all the strides that we've made over the years, they'd kind of start saying, okay, you know what? Let them do what they have to do and let them help. But I guess that's why the paranormal clergy was created. Why haven't you been given a chance to do more paranormal investigating?
I don't have time. I really legit, I don't have time.
What if I gave you the time, Bishop Long? I'd like to go to that cemetery that you always bring up.
I actually did. Actually, with Judy Ann's help, I was able to go there with the Gates of Hell Cemetery. So we did some filming. I did some filming there. So I'm trying to put like a documentary together. So I was able to, squeeze some time in. I really, honestly, legitimately do not have time. I mean, my day starts quite early and goes until, after 10:15 at night, after night prayer. So it is nonstop.
I find it fascinating that, unfortunately, I mean, your ministry is like, I've never seen anyone invest so much time. You're literally doing chaplaincy, from what you told me, Monday through Sunday, because there's nobody else that's willing to do it in that one hospital except you. You're burning the candle on both ends, and I'm always thinking to myself, he's gonna burn out. He's gonna burn out.
I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a workaholic. This is my life. And that's the thing. I know I need to take some time and kind of slow things down a bit, because I'm not, my 20s or 30s, but 40s. But I've got to slow it down a bit. But it is because I'm so passionate about this ministry and what I do. That I enjoy it so much that when I'm not doing it, I feel completely inadequate. So, it's just a little thing. So, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, and that's true, because I am doing truly what I absolutely love. So I don't really see this as work, because I found my passion, I found my joy. So this is what I was born to do.
I agree.
And so to me, I don't see this as work. I just see that, and I share that passion with others. And some people like that passion, and some people don't, and that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, one day I'm going to force you to have a vacation I promise it won't be anywhere near an ocean. It'll be in the springs, the natural springs of Florida, which the water is 72 degrees all year round.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Wow. I am going to be going to the Arkansas Paranormal Expo. And so I'll be doing that. And I might, hopefully, if I think everything is working out, that we'll stay a couple days there at Graceland prior to heading over to the Arkansas Paranormal. So
You've been to Graceland before, haven't
been
you?
to Graceland many times, but I haven't been since they've done the huge, big thing. I haven't been since they did the big, the guest house. So they've had a guest house for a while. Then they completely remodeled the whole thing. So I haven't been there for quite some time.
You'll like it. I went, 3 years ago to something like that, and it was amazing. Not only that, but I didn't get the whole tour. But that's a different point altogether. A question, or actually a statement from Kenneth Torres. A lot of the work is pastoral counseling and chaplaincy, not fighting demons per se,
No.
all of the time. And I have to agree. Do you find that is basically what it is?
Yeah, honestly, what's more troubling to me, rather than fighting demons, is because when you train, you understand the theological concepts of it, and etc. That's one thing. But what I don't get, what I don't understand, what frightens me even more than even demonic possession, is the unbelievable hate that is online right now. The trolling that is online, that people that's sadistic, that's sadism. That
Yes.
is, and what people don't understand, that is demonic influence. That's ordinary demonic activity. So when someone thinks that, trolling someone and saying some nasty comment, I mean, even to kids, there was a kid, his name is Kevin, on TikTok, and he has brittle bone disease. And he's just one of the nicest kids, chipper, happy. He has his own platform. He just wants to make people laugh. And there were people that were actually reporting his live just so that he can get banned on TikTok. He wasn't doing anything. He was talking about his Legos and how he loved them. And he talked about, but these trolls. And so he came on, he said, why are you guys doing this to me? I mean, this guy's he's a 11-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He's an 11-year-old kid.
Yeah, I remember. I actually follow him too.
Terrible.
I remember the video too, and he was crying. I mean,
Yeah.
he was sobbing, crying so hard that he could barely even speak. Why are you being so mean to me? And it broke my heart. That's when I started following him, because I was like, what they're doing. And you're
It's
right.
terrible. Terrible.
It is the trolling. It's sadism. I call them keyboard warriors. They love to pick. They're bullies. That's all they are, bullies. And they love to pick on you. They know they can get away with it because they're doing it behind a keyboard on screen, and it's disgusting.
But what they don't realize, though, is that while they think that this may be funny or cute, what they don't realize is that they are the ones actually being trolled, because they haven't quite grasped that. I don't know if it's because of a lack of knowledge or insight, or just basically because they should sue their brains for non-support. But I do know that if they realize that they are being trolled, and they're being trolled by the demonic, the demonic are trolling these idiots, these trolls, to actually under demonic influence, and they're going to have to answer for what they do. So they're not bright enough to figure it out, that it's their responsibility, it's their fault. They're the ones that freely choose to do this, but this falls under ordinary demonic activity. So when you're trolling and you're saying nasty, horrible things to a person, even if they're online, people say, well, if they're online, they should take it, they should deal with it. No. Just because they're online, that doesn't give you a right to be hateful to them. That's a fallacy in logic. But so the problem is that the trolls don't realize that they're actually being trolled themselves, and they're being manipulated as a tool, because they're just not bright enough to figure it out. And they will one day figure it out when they see God face to face, and God is not going to be laughing when they play back all the things that they've said online, and the hurtful things they've said online. They'll have to answer to God for that.
I agree 100%. These people are influenced. It's very much like the cartoons that we grew up watching. You have the angel on one shoulder, you have the devil on the other, and whichever one gets through, it's usually, unfortunately, the devil, because they appeal to our darkest side of us, and they actually encourage us to do what we naturally are supposed to do, which is sin. It's much easier to listen to this one than it is to listen to the angel. And unfortunately, that's the way it works. There was a question that I found interesting, and I know the answer to it because I've known
Hmm.
you for so long. Uh, from Nicole Gaspard. What are your thoughts about premonitions? I have them often, especially either warnings or death presentations. I guess premonitions she meant, or something like that. What's your opinion on that,
I
Bishop?
mean, the Bible talks about premonitions, especially with dreams.
Yeah,
And so I certainly think we have scripture based backing this up, that there are people that have that gift of interpreting dreams. So to me, it's kind of like, well, I think we can't just dismiss it and say it's hogwash, because it's not.
it's not.
So we certainly see, we absolutely. I mean, Joseph. I mean, he was obviously, uh, and there's a lot of people, and even Revelations. I mean, in Revelations, of course, we're talking about dreams. We're also talking about visions, etc. But Ezekiel and Daniel. So I think we have to be real cautious about saying, well, that doesn't exist. That's all paranormal, hoodoo, voodoo kind of stuff. And I
Mm.
disagree. I disagree.
A lot of shout outs. Jennifer Bailey's on, by the way. You
Well,
know
hello
Jennifer
there,
Bailey.
Sister Bailey.
Yes, Jennifer is an incredible person.
Hmm.
And also Nicole, Kathy Kerrigan, Patrick McDonald. And also, we have a question here, and I'd like to get to it if we can. From where did he go? I can't even. I can't even navigate this computer here. Jeez.
Must be the
I,
old. It's what happens when you get
It's the
old.
tornado on your end,
Is
Bishop.
that
It's
what
your
it
fault.
is? Is that what
It's
it
your
is?
fault. I think Dorothy is flying over your overhead
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice,
Okay.
nice.
It's a recovery there.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, there was one, and it was a statement. I'm gonna get to it. It's just there's so many people commenting all at the same time. I'm not used to this. All right, so here we go. From Kenneth Torres again. I just want to say, Bishop Long, you're one of the reasons I became clergy after military. Rich, I followed you for years. You both are godly men and have been given a special grace. Well, thank you very much for that compliment. You see, that's not trolling. That's actually the way we should be with each other, everybody, everyone.
That's right.
Uh,
And I know the Bishop Torres, and of course, thank you for your service. I'm a huge supporter of our men and women in military, and those who've given their lives, and those who continue to serve, and those who've retired from our military. So I make no apologies for being an absolute huge supporter of our men and women who serve and who have served in our military. So I think that that serves. It says a lot about it. I think integrity, and so yeah, I know Kenneth. I've known him for a while, and that he does great work with the Warren Foundation.
and once again, a lot. I'm going to be delving into a lot of things, but I know I'm giving you 1 hour. I'm leaving it up to you because if that tornado gets close enough,
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
please
I'm
do.
good. I'm good.
You know. So what case affected you? Would you say it's been several cases that have affected you? Because I know that there's. I remember you telling me this years ago, and I was thinking to myself, it's that bad. Um,
Hmm.
you have to have an industrial fan
Hmm.
going while you sleep.
Yeah.
You want to let people in as to why and what case do you think brought you to that point?
Well, I've always had a fan. I've always had a fan, even but the first case that I talked about on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the case that I didn't like. I didn't like the vulnerability. I did not like that. That really bothered me a great deal. Because, um, you know, the case that I talked about where she had played with a Ouija board, and she used the Lesser Key of Solomon,
The
because
Lesser Key of
she had,
Solomon, yeah.
and that the eyes went black, solid black, but it was I didn't like that feeling of feeling completely catatonic and not being able to move or say or do anything at all, and just feeling very vulnerable at that moment. I did not like that feeling. That bothered me a great deal, and it opened my mind, opened my eyes to the reality of the dangers of the ministry. So, because I've always read about it, and I talked to other exorcists about it, and And I guess in a way, I was like, yeah. I read about it. And I kind of dismissed it as if, well, it's not that bad. But it's different from an intellectual perspective versus actual physically being there. And when you're actually there and your whole body is overwhelmed with that type of presence and you can't move, you can't talk, you can't scream, you can't say, I'm in trouble. I think that's what really, for me, humbled me. It gave me a big piece of humble pie. It's one thing being intellectually. You can be intellectual all day long. You can have you can be a walking computer when it comes to theology and demonology. That's wonderful. Congratulations. But it's a different world when you're actually present. Because everything is your body, and everything in your body is telling you to run away, go away. Yeah. What are you doing? Why are you here? You shouldn't be here. It's fight or flight mentality.
Fight or flight, yeah. And I agree 100%. And I've told this to many people that have said, "Hey, I want to be a demonologist," and I always say, "Are you sure about that?" Because I sure as heck, if this is a calling, a demonologist, an exorcist, it's a calling. You can't just say, one day I wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be a demonologist, or a priest. No, it doesn't work that way. It takes years and years of study. Plus, you need to know that it is a calling. There was a question from Patrick Scott Daner, I believe. Can demons read your mind, and do they know when you are afraid?
They're not omniscient. They're not omnipotent. They're not God. Now, what people get confused with there are two terms, and a lot of people get confused with that versus reading their mind versus, being able to be everywhere at one time, and they just simply can't. We have to be very careful with elevating demons to that type of status.
To the God level.
There's a term called retrocognition and prognostication. So retrocognition is the ability of knowing your sins, and not because they can read your mind, but because sins fall under what is called ordinary demonic activity. So through temptation. So the demonic will tempt you to call, and then you ultimately freely choose to sin. So that's why they know your sins, and they use the retrocognition ability to mention those sins during the rite. That's why exorcists will always have the sacrament of reconciliation prior to performing an exorcism, so that we take that tool, that ability away from them. Correct. And then so prognostication is the ability to know the future. So, but no, they cannot read your mind, but they do know the sins that you've committed, which falls under ordinary demonic activity.
And they will use it against you during an exorcism.
And that's why we have the sacrament of reconciliation prior to performing the rite. So correct. Again, we take that ability away from them, so they can't use that because the sins have been absolved and it's done. So they can't use that against us. So if we walked into a situation where someone who was possessed and we had not received the sacrament of reconciliation, then certainly they would have that ability to, and they would use it against you. And it's basically to embarrass you, to stop the rite.
We have a question from Tina Paris-Duché. Hello, gentlemen. Question: if we have done residential case and the homeowners are convinced they have demonic activity, despite our best efforts to convince them that it is not true, is there somewhere we can send them for counsel through the church? I feel terrible leaving a client feeling hopeless.
My question would be, why do you think, number one, it's not true, and why do you think that they do believe that it is? So I would ask them specifically, the homeowners, to explain to me why you think that you have a demonic infestation issue. And then I would be able, once they are able to tell you every single one of those issues that they're having, then you can debunk or explain every single one of those things from a logical manner, how you were able to debunk them. So I would need to know certainly more information about why it is that you believe that they do not have a demonic infestation, because the question implies, if you look at the question itself, it implies, and again, I don't know this person, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but it implies that you're trained in demonology by you the saying that they have no demonic that's present. So the question that I would have to ask, well, okay, so you say that there's no demonic that's present. That's fair, but where's your training to determine that is not demonic? And two, why do the families think that it is? So we have to look at it from that perspective, not to be rude or disrespectful to anybody.
No, I understand clergy, where you're coming from.
Because a lot of laity, a lot of teams out there will go out and say, well, that's not demon, that's not a demonic. And then my question would be to them is, well, why do you say that? Where is it? How are you validating? How are you determining, in fact, that there's nothing demonic that's present? So I would have to, look a little bit further into the case itself.
If it's based off an assumption, or which is usually what it is, but why even turn to laity, which is what I am, or an actual bishop as you are, if you already know the answer to your question, and why even ask? My thing is that a person that is not quite sure should turn to theology. This is a theological situation. Let's make the divide right here. You have paranormal, you have theology. They don't work together, but they can work and help each other out. If one is not paranormal and it could be inhuman, demonic, yes, that's when you bring theology or theological individuals, clergy, into the situation, because paranormal investigators and teams should never, ever handle anything demonic. They're not trained for this. Plain and simple. You and I both have years and years and years of training, but a lot of people that come to us and they say, I know it's demonic. I'm like, what makes you think it's demonic? And I always ask them that question for a reason. And they say, I just know. I'm like, so then why'd you come to me? And I'm sure you get the same questions as well. So to that individual that asked that question, I hope that they do turn to clergy and ask them to just, give them the proper guidance to discern whether it is or it is not. To date, have there been any challenging cases? I know you can't talk about details or whatnot, but from the last time I saw you, which was, what was it, 2022, 23?
It's been a bit, yeah.
It's been a minute. Have you had anything like a possession or infestation that's been challenging between then and now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And not to talk much about the individual at all, because we always keep their names, if anything, classified. But I want people to understand something. When it comes to an exorcism, it isn't bishop going in there or clergy and waving a magic wand and it goes away. That's not how it works. How many times have you had to go in for one particular client, time and time and time again, because the demon or demons, plural, refused to leave?
Yeah, there was one case that took 3 years.
Wow. You see?
And that was an incubus case. She was 68 years old.
Oh, yes. I remember that case. And unfortunately, may she rest in peace.
She passed away, but she passed away from natural causes. The last year of her life, she was no longer being attacked. She would still feel the bed walkers. She described them as bed walkers. So she would still feel them on the bed creeping towards her, but they wouldn't touch her anymore. And so the last year of her life, she suffered from this for 5 years. And so for the last year of her life, then she was no longer being assaulted. And then when she passed away, the family asked me to preside at her funeral.
That I remember you talking about that case years ago. In fact, Mid-South, we're talking what, 2005?
Because that was the case that I was actually thinking about quitting and leaving the ministry completely, leaving the whole demonology field, because it was 3 years. I spent 3 years working with her, and it was violent. I mean, this was not. This was a case that really needed, I think, the attention of an real experienced for years of exorcist, because I wasn't prepared for it spiritually at all. I truly wasn't, because it was taking an emotional toll on me, because I was doing everything that I should be doing and following the procedure, etc. But it just wouldn't stop, and she'd constantly call, and the family would call, and I mean, you got to remember, when I got involved with that case, she was ripped apart.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
In the private and anal area. So, I mean, even her doctor got involved, and so her family had contacted me, and her doctor contacted me, because they couldn't explain what was going on. And so but she was just a beautiful woman, just a wonderful soul. And for 3 years, I worked with her, and I couldn't make it stop. And so I was really close to quitting, because I was thinking somebody else is more experienced in this. I just need to stop. I'm not holy enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And then I went to my mentor and I spoke to him, and that's when he told me to get off the cross and let Jesus have a try. And
Wise
I mean,
words.
but it's true. I mean, because I said this. I said, look, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I said, my gosh, get off the cross and let Jesus have a try. And he was an older priest, and he said, James, all I heard you say was I. He said, you're not doing anything. You need to learn you're an instrument that God is using, and you need to humble your ego and put your ego in check, because if you don't, this woman's not ever going to be delivered. And I kind of needed that, that swift kick in the rear, because the demonic was manipulating my emotions, because I wanted to fix her, because I didn't like seeing her going through this type of pain. So I wanted the pain to stop, and I was getting angry because I was doing everything that I was supposed to do, and it wasn't working. But then I realized later on down the years that the demons were using this situation to get to me. It wasn't about necessarily her. It was also about me too. I was under oppression because it was affecting me and tearing me down emotionally to the point where I was ready to walk away from the case.
Well, yeah, just to back up what you're saying, and then there's another question that I'm going to bring up. It's true. We are not the one casting those demons out. It is, remember, there's a verse that states, greater is he who is in thee than in he who is in the world. And it is that person that has to put themselves aside and realize, in Christ's name, everything is possible. It's not you. You're simply the vessel. You're the messenger.
That's right.
He's the one that has the power. And when you start thinking it's you, which is why your mentor told you this, get off the cross. This isn't about you. You're getting in the way of letting Christ do his work. He was correct. And this tends to happen to us often. And I agree 100%. People need to start understanding that the work that we do is very, very serious. And I wish people would understand it's not. We're simply the messenger. That's it. I don't have any powers, special powers. Neither do you. From Becky Connor, Bishop, when you worked that case, did it leave and return? Question.
I'm sorry, what?
Mark, how can they refuse to leave? Did you hear me?
Let's see, Bishop, when you worked the case, did it leave and return? Well, it never violated her again. So the last year of her life, it never violated her. But she still, sometimes she would describe them as 3 10-pound bed walkers. That's what she described. She said they're bed walkers, like 3 10-pound dogs that would slowly creep up to her. And then she was wide awake. So this is not any type of situation where she was going to sleep or waking up. So it was nothing like that at all. She was completely aware of her faculties, and she could feel them. She can feel them walking towards her just as she began to say her prayers, going for sleep. And then she would feel like she was being held down and then, of course, violated. So the last year of her life she could still feel the bed walkers. So that was frustrating, in that I wanted that to stop. But I was just happy she was no longer being assaulted for the last year of her life. That was because she kept saying, if I can just get that to work, because even her faith was being challenged too. And even her family's faith was being challenged.
And oftentimes people tend to forget. And I love what Courtney Peterson said, ego, easing God out. And that's what ego does, is it pretty much, when you start thinking, okay, this is my fault. I'm not doing enough prayer. I'm not doing enough of this. I. That is the problem. It's when you let God take the wheel, to use, for lack of better words. That's really the case in this situation. Jeremy Hinton is asking, Father, since Bobby Mackey is gone, will those demons stay on the property or go with the owners?
It depends on if the owners have an attachment, or it can remain on the infestation. That's one of the issues that a lot of people get confused about. Well, how can you have demonic infestation if the individuals move out? And I always tell them, well, you could have a pre-existing infestation. So if you had individuals who were praying to Lucifer and doing things that they shouldn't have done, they get that invitation and they move out. And then, of course, you move back in. Can you have that issue? Sure. Yeah, you can absolutely, because it's cursed land.
Another question from Nancy Melton. She must have been a very brave woman. I would have been terrified. Okay, that was a statement, but let me just also clear the air, and you can back me up on this, just so that people understand. When it comes to incubus succubus cases, this is not. It may seem sexual in nature, but it's not. It is not sexual. They are not there to sexually attack you. They are literally, trying to take over you. They're attempting to possess you. It starts off with oppression and leads into possession. And a lot of people see, but it's sexual. At first, it's very painful. And then after a while, the person starts submitting to the visitations. What's your impressions on this? At least from my training over the years, that's what I've discovered. It's not really sexual. It's not their intent.
No, I've been saying that for over 2 decades. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. There is no actual act of sexual. It's a manipulation of the muscles. And it's a contortion of the muscles, and even to a point where it causes the muscles to rip internally. And so there actually, in the beginning, for most cases with incubus and succubus cases that I've worked, actually in all cases that I've worked that are incubus and succubus, it starts out with a dream state that is pleasurable. It's not aggressive at all, and you welcome that. And then the activity becomes a little bit more aggressive. This is where the old term, the old hag syndrome, comes in, because what happens then, you say, okay, that's enough. It's invasive. Stop in the name of Christ. I command you. Well, then the gig is up. And so, but again, people get even sleep paralysis confused with demonic, and not all sleep paralysis episodes are sleep paralysis. As a matter of fact, most people who have sleep paralysis suffer from either isolated sleep paralysis or recurrent isolated sleep paralysis, which is a very, very common. Actually, quite a few people have that. And I had a neurologist on the show, and he was talking about sleep paralysis and how most people who have recurrent isolated sleep paralysis suffer from narcolepsy. And so it's something to get tested for. So, but it can be quite frightening. But with the sleep paralysis, the reason it is not always demonic is because when you have, and it's terrifying. Certainly it's true when you're catatonic and you can't move, you can't say anything, and you see this horrible ghastly figure. Even Annalise McKell had that issue. But with Annalise McKell, she would also have demonic infestations. She'd have manifestations while she was completely awake and alert. And so where it's sleep paralysis, if you're just having these episodes when you're going to bed or you're waking up and there's no demonic manifestation as far as the infestation, then there's not sleep, then it's not a demonic. Because if you have a demonic infestation, that by that very nature, you're going to have manifestations. And so if the only thing that you're experiencing is when you're waking up or going to sleep paralysis. Whereas demonic, that's not contingent upon waking up or going to sleep. So you can have that. So in other words, the 68-year-old woman, she would have these episodes be complete catatonic even at 3:00 in the afternoon when she's fully alert.
So you don't have to be asleep in order for this to happen. So
yeah. Matter of fact, there was one time she actually drove to the church, and she used to drive a pickup, and she described it as a plunger, and being obviously used, and she crashed her truck. And so she was going to church.
That being, the reason why. Okay, we are at 6:54. Do you wish to keep going, or
unless you want to kick me off?
I don't want to kick you off. Brother, I would keep you. I'd invite you to Florida, but you'd be way too hot over here.
You guys are that's true. I mean, you guys are in the butt crack of Satan. Oh my gosh.
I have never heard the butt crack of Satan, but you know what? I'm going to start using it.
Seriously, it down in Miami. I mean, y'all hot down there.
Well, have you ever been to Miami? I know you've been like north of Miami, but I'm not sure if you've been to Miami.
I went to Argosy University. I think the closest I have been to is Argosy University in Sarasota, Florida, for my master's of education. So.
No, wait. You also went to the Kenilworth Lodge, and I'm trying to remember exactly what. I think that was in Fort Myers.
Fort Myers, yeah. And I also we used to, when my family, we used to always go down to Sanibel Island.
That is a lovely.
Yeah, we
place.
we always had a little beach house there, so we always went to Sanibel.
On the Gulf side,
yeah.
But yeah, but when I finally do get my house in northern Florida, I'll have a place for you to stay, and you can bless the house.
There we go. There we go.
All right. So, so we're keeping you on, and I promise it'll be as painless as possible. If you got to jump off, I totally understand, but I want to keep you on here.
Yeah, let me check here. I'll
Make
check
sure.
to see.
Okay.
So far, no tornado
No
warning, so that's a good thing. Yeah, yeah. It looks like this rain, so hopefully it just stays away.
Okay. Let's hope so.
Yeah. What are we gonna do?
Bishop, you're better. You're better as a bishop, not a meteorologist. Let's
Isn't
keep
that
it
the
that
truth?
way. Okay?
That is
All right.
so true. That
Just
is absolutely. I'm not good as a meteorologist.
And you'd be screaming tornadoes too. Okay, so from Becky Connor, I keep trying to get Bishop to go with us to Jupiter, Florida, to go to a free dive with sharks.
No.
But
No. I'd rather lick the pavement right there off the ground. After a circus of I would lick the pavement on the ground after a circus of elephants had just rolled through, rather than go shark diving with a bunch of sharks that want to. No. Have you seen those cages?
Yes.
Have you seen those cages?
Yes.
No. So some of you had a visual of me actually licking the pavement after a herd of elephants come close. But I'm telling you, that would be far more exciting than going shark diving with these stupid sharks that have these great big huge teeth that's looking at me and saying, I want to have you for a snack. No. I've seen no. I've seen movies. I know how it goes.
Oh, and she states we didn't go in a cage.
What?
She went shark diving and she didn't even use a cage. I was not under that impression. Okay.
I mean, I want to meet Jesus, but I want to meet Jesus in a bed where I'm relaxing and they give me some morphine and I'm like, okay, see ya. That's how I want to go, not by Jaws coming up and saying, let's take a bite and let's circle around and do it again. No, that's not for me. It's not.
From our producer, Jen, Megalodon.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go.
At least that'd be fast. Megalodon would be fast.
Yeah, I won't feel that. I mean, I'd be gone along with several boats and houses.
I'm telling you,
Megalodon could swallow. So I've often heard you state, I don't fear demons.
No.
And I understand exactly what you mean. When you know your enemy, you know for sure that they can't do anything to you.
No.
As they can try, and they will. But if your faith is strong with God and you've prepared, and oftentimes this is something I was trained with other mentors, that you should take 2 days before going into a demonic case of fasting, meditation, prayer, and also the church praying for you. You're weakening the body, strengthening the spirit. That's what fasting is all about. What do you fear other than? We're not going to bring up sharks. We already did. I want to talk about what would you, because apparently there was a case, and we all do. All of us that have been involved in this have had a case that have rattled our cage, our shark cage. Okay, that one case was the one that you spoke of on the show, where you felt sucked in. And would you say you were in the mind of that demon, or it was showing you visions of what you fear the most, and that's why it affected you so much?
To me, it felt the complete total absence of God. And that's what I didn't like about it, is that it was complete no hope, total fear, anxiety, frustrations, because I couldn't move, I couldn't say anything, I couldn't talk, couldn't ask for help. And I did not like that at all. I did not like that feeling of hopelessness. And I did not like that feeling of being victimized. And so I have learned since then how to control that. But I did not like that at all, that experience. But it was an experience that was needed because, like I said, you can read about something all day long, but until you actually experience it, it's a different world.
And I've often said this, and one of many, oh my gosh, I've lost count. I always explain to people that when you are dealing with something demonic, which is very rare, might I add, it is more psychological warfare than anything else, and it's testing your faith, so you have to be prepared. So the psychological warfare, would you say that was your first shot at psychological warfare with a demonic?
Sure. Yeah,
That one particular
and
case.
it was also a lesson learned in that I don't have to fear, and I don't fear demons. I because
Exactly.
that's one of the things that they will do is they will manipulate and use that fear against you. And I've talked about this several times before. Is that you have to remember that there's a big difference between you and demons.
Hmm.
And the big difference is you're created in the image of God, not they. Not they are not. You
Correct.
are God's children. They are not. The moment you begin to fear, the moment you begin to pray is the moment that the devil begins to tremble in fear. So the moment that you begin to call upon Mary and the saints above and angels above, and you call upon Christ, you call upon the whole legions of angels above, you have to understand, you have to know that the only being that should be afraid is the demonic.
Correct.
And so that's why there's the idea of being fearful of a demon when you know your value does not make sense to me. Because if you truly know your value as a child of God, then you don't there's no reason for you to fear a parasite. There's no reason to fear that because they fear you, and that's one of the reasons why they ultimately want to destroy the body, because we're the living temple of the Holy Spirit. We are created in God's image. So how do you really blaspheme God? To desecrate God's image. And so it's a form of exorcism, and what leads to possession, not that actually, what leads to possession is the destruction of the living temple of the Holy Spirit, which is our bodies. And we're in created in God's image. So you try to desecrate God's image. But you have to understand, this is why I don't like the idea. I always tell people you have a choice when it comes to demons. You can either be a victim or you cannot be a victim. So that's your choice. If you're going to be a victim, then they will victimize you. And I just simply, that's non-negotiable for me.
You know, the first time I ever heard the term used, parasite, was from my late friend, may rest in peace, Paulino, who passed away recently. And he used to be he was in the seminary studying to be a priest back in the day, in the 70s, when he was working with Ed and Lorraine Warren. He then left. He didn't want to do the seminary anymore. But I remember that, I was having a discussion with him, and he said, Rich, you have to think of demons and how they work. They use fear
Sure.
as fuel.
Yep.
They are parasitic in nature. Would you agree with that statement?
100%. And because they will, and that's the thing. They are, and here's what I tried to explain. They are using something that you are giving them permission to use against you.
Correct.
Which is fear. So when you control that fear, they have nothing over you. Because there's nothing that they can. So that's why I don't fear. There's nothing that a demon can do to me that I'm not afraid. I have no fear. The only thing that I'm afraid or I'm concerned about the person who's possessed, because the body can only sustain so much trauma. So that my concern is for the person possessed. But I don't fear the parlor tricks. I don't fear the games. I don't fear the levitations or the throwing the voices or the pitches. These are all parlor tricks. And so when you know that they're parlor tricks and you silence the voice, because in the rite, you silence the voice. It's required to silence the voice. And so I just don't, I don't fear something. I'm not the one that should be afraid. It is actually the parasite that should be afraid of me, and the parasite should be afraid of you, because we are all God's child. And we call upon God. We call it Alpha and Omega. It should be, they are the ones trembling in fear, not us.
It's like saying, Dad, bully.
That's right. Hey, you know what? My dad is bigger than yours. So what do you want? I mean, you're talking to Lucifer over here. Have you read the book of Revelation? He gets his butt kicked. What do you want? What do you want from him?
We already know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. We have a question from our chat room from Jacob Paul Rays.
Yep.
Thoughts on Annalise Michiel?
Yeah, I believe Annalise was possessed.
And do you believe in the fact that, because I know part of the case, a lot of the case has already been released. That case file is pretty much known by everyone, but she was doing Hail Marys. I remember when she was possessed, she was doing Hail Marys to the extent that the ligaments in her knees gave out. They were no longer there. But the demon, just to mock the Trinity, to mock her faith, was forcing her to drop to her knees and back up again. So she had two individuals, men, pulling her back up so she could do this again. Do you feel that she was what the movie, because I personally don't feel this to be the case, the movie made her out to be a martyr. I don't feel she was a martyr. I think she was an example later on used, but there's a lot of that story that a lot of people, I've read the case file before. There's a lot of details to that. And people often say, but how did Annalise Michiel, someone that was a devout Catholic, become demonically possessed? And I tell them every time, do you honestly think the devil's going to bother with the people that he doesn't have to worry about? They're already doing what he doesn't care about. He's going to focus more on people like you and me because we're the challenge. And that's what I tell them. What do you feel Annalise Michiel, at least to me, was an example of bravery more than anything else, because she still tried to fight. And I believe she died weighing, what, 71 pounds?
Yeah, she was 68 pounds.
68 pounds. What is your feeling when it comes to that? Was that more bravery, or do you believe that she was, made out to be a martyr like the movie made her out to be?
Well, she actually believed. She believed that she was given a vision, and the vision was of Mary telling her that if you want to go, you can go now, you can leave, or you can stay, and to continue to teach about praying and keeping the faith and things of this nature. And she made the decision to stay. So that really is where the belief is why she, as a martyr kind of a situation. But I mean, in 1968, she was 17 years old. She was still in high school. She began to suffer then convulsions. And so she had her first epileptic attack actually in 1969. And unfortunately, a neurologist, psychiatric individual diagnosed, she had grand mal epilepsy. And
at least they claimed that she did. Was that ever really confirmed?
Oh yeah. Psychiatric clinic Warsaw actually diagnosed her with her. So she was diagnosed with this, and I believe she probably had grand mal epilepsy. But that's when she was at that time, they really didn't understand epilepsy, and unfortunately, she was placed in a psychiatric clinic, and that's when she began experiencing these what she would call as devilish hallucinations or ghastly images while praying. She also began hearing voices, and it told her that she was damned for eternity. That all falls under demonic oppression and demonic obsession. So it's breaking down the intellect and the will of the person. So to me, she was exhibiting absolute classic signs of oppression, no question about that. And so really, ultimately, what happened is the first unofficial diagnosis. It was made by an older woman, and Annalise was very devout in her faith. Obviously, she went on a pilgrimage, but Annalise kept avoiding an image of Christ. She wouldn't walk close to the image of Christ, and she refused to drink from a water from a holy spring, a blessed spring. And then she actually began to omit this foul odor of human waste.
Human waste or rotting skin is what I read.
Yeah, and that's why because she refused that, and that at that moment she began to emit this horrible smell. So yeah, it's a terrible case.
Yeah, it was, and it went on for years actually. And a lot of people think that it just happened in 6 months to a year. No, it went on for quite a few years.
Well, yes, actually, 10 months. There were 67 exorcisms.
Yeah.
And then 1 or 2 each week, and lasting sometimes up to 4 hours. And it lasted for 10 months in 1975 to 1976.
So from Rachel Brunell, hey, so if my roommate thought she was talking to me, sitting with my back to her, but I was in the bathroom, and when I came out and it was gone, what do you think that is?
There's a lot of people experiencing that. I'm getting a lot of people refer to that as a doppelganger. Not that you don't necessarily see them, but you actually hear them. Demonics can mimic the voice of deceased loved ones, and even loved ones. However, there's always, at least from my experience, from my cases, there's always some type of distortion. It's not as pure and clear. That's why a lot of times you'll see on TikTok or videos that I watch, and it's very clear. The voice is perfect. Pitch. And so you know that's all someone playing on TikTok. And
I've had two doppelgangers. People that have seen me somewhere else, and I was
it's
home.
interesting.
I find it fascinating. I'm like, I know it was you, Rich. You just wouldn't turn your head. I was like, I was home. So it can't be me. From Kat Maria from Trinity Paranormal Investigators of Long Island. Long name, but I think I got it right. And by the way, they will be added onto the paranormal clergy very soon.
Good.
Great group. Question from Kat Maria. She's the lead investigator. I heard the original tapes of her voice. It sounded like someone else. What's your thoughts on it? Before you even respond, I heard a chorus of voices in the original tapes. There was a lot of voices in there coming out at the same time. What's your impression on?
There's a lot of tapes out on YouTube that are fake, because actually the case was sealed, and so I studied it when I was in the Roman seminary, and so I was able to actually hear it. And there were actually 32 pitches that was discovered in her voice. Some people say 37. Doesn't matter. Once you get past 3 pitches, it's humanly impossible. So
all
that's
at the same time as she
all
speaks.
at the same time. Yeah.
And that's one of the many things that a lot of people sometimes do experience. I've had 2 cases where it was a man and a woman, not separate cases, but it sounded like a chorus of voices coming out at the same time.
Yeah.
And it can, if you got to have a poker face, because when that happens and you go like that, and my eyes don't do that, I'm squinty. All right, you're immediately showing not the person, you're showing that demon or demons. Your cage has been rattled. You need to keep a straight face. And I've had to do that over the years when I'm assisting. Have you had something like that happen in cases that you've taken on?
As far as what specifically?
A chorus of voices coming out all at the same time.
That's why in the rite you have to silence the voice. There are several steps to performing the solemn rite, and one of the steps is to silence the voice, because there is no conversation in an exorcism. It doesn't exist. So any movie that you see where an exorcist is having a conversation is not following the rite. See, the rite has it's very strict in the rubrics. The rubrics are the rules of the rite. And it's very clear that there is no conversation. There's 2 things you command, not ask, and that is the name and the hour of departure, and that's it. Anything else, you silence the voice. There's nothing else that you need to know or hear, because that's all. The only thing it's going to do is cause disruption and distraction of the rite. So you just silence the voice. There's nothing else that the demon needs to say to you. So there's nothing. You don't need to know anything else. Because if you do, because remember, they're very, very wise. Very manipulative, and it's easy once you get into that conversation. That's what happened in the Annalise case. The exorcist, quite honestly, failed in that aspect, because they were asking too many questions.
Yeah.
They're asking way too many questions, and the rite's quite clear about that.
Not only that, there were more than just. I think it was 3 bishops that were involved.
Yeah, it was. There were several actually. There were, of course, there's one bishop who actually gave the permission, and the Bishop Stengel, and granted the priest Rentz and Arnold Rentz to exercise and use the ritual model. So,
and oftentimes people seem to they're under this misconception that when you're doing an exorcism, you're supposed to have dialogue with the demon or demons, plural. Not the case. You're the one dictating the dialogue, which is the right. And you don't care what is coming out of that person's mouth. It's not that person. It is what God is there through you battling. And it's only when you give in to what that person is saying, or what's within that person is saying, that they got you. That's all it takes. That little crack in your armor for them to take over. And a lot of people need to understand, this isn't for everyone. If you don't have a calling for this, please thank God for not having a calling, because you're plagued by this, the memories and how they try over and over again, and the constant prayer that you have to be in. I pray every day, and I'll tell you this much, the challenges, they still come, but you know what? As long as you hold your faith in God, anything can be done. when it comes to your experience, when it comes to Native American, because as you stated, your grandmother was Cherokee,
So was my grandfather.
and your so is your grandfather. Um, I know you have a great deal of respect for Native
Oh
American
yeah,
faith
sure.
and their ways. Do you believe that they're closest to the most natural way to God, if anything? Because even though there are some that will say Jesus was the Messiah, but their way of being, calling upon spirit, you know, others may call God something else, but I have a great deal of respect for the Native American faith. Do you feel that they could be that lost tribe that the Bible talks about?
No. And
No.
actually, my grandmother was she was Christian, and so when she always referred to the Holy Spirit, and
Mm.
so she was very devout in her faith. Matter of fact, I baptized her all her life. She was never baptized.
What
Even
an
when I
honor.
was, yeah, it was, and I baptized her when I was in the seminary, and I still have a picture of me, giving her the baptismal candle. So that I'll never ever forget that, never. But she's always had devout faith in Christ. So, but yeah, but to me, that's the thing with me. I don't. I get very frustrated when I go to cathedrals and I see gold everywhere. I don't like that. That is gaudy. It's disturbing on all levels to me, because I think, how many people can you feed with just that painting that's on the wall? And so I understand beauty. I get beauty. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, I find it appalling that there's so much waste, and I say waste because it's just gaudiness, when you can actually, help kids not go hungry that night. Or by seriously, you can feed. There are some paintings on churches where you could feed an entire neighborhood of kids, and
Hmm.
so I find God in nature, and I also, of course, I find God in church, but I find God in simplicity.
Yes.
See, when you get cluttered and it's all this golden gaudiness, that to me is distraction. Because, and I guess perhaps that's one of the reasons why I'm a Benedictine, because I like simplicity, because it is in the simple times of life that I experience God the most.
I agree 100%. In fact, I'd like to segue into what your ministry is. And when I first met you, I was so impressed that your ministry, it was not only to, teach the word of God, but to also give to the homeless and
Mm.
battered women's ministry as
Yeah.
well. Are you still giving to the homeless and battered women's
Oh,
ministry?
I will always give to the homeless. That'll never stop. That will never stop. And the battered women, I do that, but I can't. There's just the funding is simply not there anymore. So,
Mm.
but the homeless, I'm always helping, especially with I used to be a shelter coordinator for a homeless shelter in Louisville, and I was very, very passionate. We would actually go to, especially during the winter months. They call it white flag. So if it
Mm.
gets down below 30 degrees, we'd all hop in the car and we drive in the alleyways and see if we can find people who are homeless and say, hey, look, come on, come to the shelter. And a lot of people, I think there's a misconception about the homelessness, because the people say, well, why don't they just go get a job? Or why don't they just go to the homeless shelter? Well, people
It's
have
not
to
that easy.
understand, you got to be very, very careful, because when you go to homeless shelters, and many times you have a weapon that, if you're living on the street, you have some type of weapon to protect yourself. And when you go to a homeless shelter, you have to surrender that weapon. And 99% of the time, you don't get that weapon back. And because, unfortunately, there are people that are in control of the weapons. And sometimes they're like, oh, I could use that. And so many people who are homeless do not go to the homeless shelters, because they have to surrender the very thing that's keeping them alive when they sleep on the streets at night. Because the streets can be dangerous, can be very dangerous, especially when you have hooligans who used to go. They're not doing it so much anymore, but 10 years ago, they would go around and kicking people, homeless people, and doing terrible things and putting it up on YouTube for likes and subscribers. And they would actually go to homeless camps and beat people up, and even
Good Lord.
unalive them, and put it on YouTube. And so that was a big thing 10 years ago. That was a real big thing. So that's why a lot of homeless people do not go to the shelters, because they have to surrender their weapons.
Okay, it's from Jamie J. Rodriguez. It's Walking Tonke for the Lakota, the Great Mystery. I
Mm-hmm.
believe some of their spiritual practices. Every living thing has a spirit. What's your take on this?
Oh, absolutely. And I have no question about that. There's no The idea that people think that animals don't have spirits, just absolutely, they have souls. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They have souls, and anyone who says they don't clearly didn't study Revelation.
Yeah.
Revelation makes it very clear that our animals will be in heaven, and I definitely am convinced 100% that our fur babies will be there as well. So
Thank God.
I
Thank God.
believe that.
That's comforting to know. Just as recent as yesterday, and I'll have to send you the pictures, Bishop. A kitty cat adopted me. I'm telling you, it was the weirdest thing. Just came around the corner from the mailboxes, and I just went kitty, kitty, and it went meow, 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 meow across the courtyard up the stairs to me, and it said, "Hi, I'm adopting you." Next thing you know, I have, and thank you to Jennifer Bailey, by the way. She has sent many gifts. My friend Armando Castillo and many other people that have sent gifts because Jen posted this wish list. I have everything I need now
That
for
is
this
wonderful.
cat. This cat has more things than I do. Okay. And but that just goes to show you, and to see things like that, acts of kindness like that.
But see, and it's true, and this is where a lot of times when people say, "Where is God when you have these difficult times in life?" Well, that's God, because many times God, and I've said this to people all the time, God, when He answers your prayers, it's not trumpets blaring and on the heavens opening. Many times it's through whispers.
Yes.
It's through the subtleties of life. It's through someone calling you and saying, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on with you? What message, text message, calling, or the fur baby who decided to adopt you at this time of your life." It just this is what God's way of saying, "Hey, I'm going to answer your prayer, and I'm going to answer your prayer this way."
Yeah, and thank God for that, because Lord knows I've been praying. Not getting into details, but my situation. But yeah, it was a blessing, and a few weird things about the cat. Not going to go into detail about that either, but regardless, it's a blessing. It keeps me company. The moment I get up, it's following me all over the house. So it knows. God is mysterious when He shows His presence. Yeah. Yes, and as Jen said, it's a boy. Boy is a boy. All righty.
That's great. But, that's great.
As we're coming close to the close of the show, I really want to get people your information out there when it comes to your ministry, where people can reach you, your Bible studies, your prayer meeting, your prayer night, your night prayers, and also all the other things that you're involved in, because I got to give you the rest of the time just for you to talk about that.
Well, we'll just keep it simple. We'll just I have the Bible study coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern on Sundays and Wednesdays, and it airs, of course, on my profile. And then, of course, we have night prayer coming up at the 10 p.m. Eastern Standards, Monday through Friday. And so you can just go to bishopjameslong.com, scroll all the way down to where it says night prayer, click the link, and it'll take you to where the speaker that we use. And then, of course, now my online classes are free. So you can go there to bishopjameslong.com, click on the class link. And then if you want to make a donation to the church, that the funds don't go to me, it goes to Father Tommy, and he's responsible for the treasury of the church, because we don't get paid. So we do this ministry 100% free. So it helps some of our clergy. And so that would be wonderful. But more importantly, the church's website, usocc.org. That is the church's website.
Yeah. And let me tell you, if you guys, and I've popped in a few times here and there with Bible study. I love the way you bring history in, because people seem to think what they apply. Thank you for that post, Jennifer, usocc.org. That's where you can go get everything when it comes to Bishop James Long and his ministry. But to give people a little preview, you need to understand how people thought back then, not how they think today.
Sure.
When you're interpreting the Bible and prophecies and all the people don't seem to understand. If you were right now, and this is to you and everyone that's listening in, if you were to go back 2,000 years ago with a cell phone, now you're not going to have satellites in orbit, but you will have pictures, and you'll be able to show them pictures, and they'll be like, oh, you're a wizard, you're a witch. And come on, They possibly kill you, stone you, or something. You need to think of the way they think. And I love the way you bring the way they thought in with the history applied to also the scriptures. And it gives people a better understanding of how people thought back then.
Well, you have to. I mean, otherwise you can take it out of context, and a lot of people do, especially the Old Testament. And I've talked about this a lot. There's a lot of Christians out there that are throwing the Leviticus and Deuteronomy at a lot of people. And but see, here's the deal. This is what I don't understand. These are part of the Holiness Code. The Holiness Code has 613 laws. You cannot cherry pick. You cannot pick and choose which of these 613 laws that you're going to use. You have to follow all 600. That's why Jesus didn't like the Pharisees, because the Pharisees were using the Holiness Code to judge and condemn other people, but they themselves were not following it. And he actually called them a brood of vipers.
Yes.
So you can't do this. But also their understanding of what a Messiah was. And then Jesus comes on, and that's why I love the Christ that I love, is because the Christ that I love is the individual that defended the lepers, the prostitutes, the sinners, the sick, and the people that were outcast, told that they were being condemned by God for their sins. And but Jesus comes on board and say, no, every life is valuable. Every life is valuable.
Amen.
So.
And to what you said before we close, he stated, "You are nothing but whitewashed tombs with dead men's bones in them." And that was in reference to the Pharisees. And it's just like him calling them vipers. You can look all regal and beautiful on the outside, but you got everything in you is dead.
That's right.
It's dead, because the one that should be living through you is God. And that's what people need to understand, that's why we are here. We are a creation of God. We're created in his image, and we're here to serve him. There are some that choose not to. And that's the one thing that, if you recall, back in 2011, I believe, at the Kenilworth Lodge, and you said, "Rich, what's the one thing that God has made different of you and me and everything else?" And I said, I don't know. We were created in his image. And he said, no. And I was asking you about ghosts, demons being ghosts. And you said, he gave us free will. Huge light bulb over my head. Thank you very much, Bishop, because another lesson learned that day. And I was like, well, I'll be. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I'm going to let you go, Bishop, so you can get ready for your show for the next, I believe it's Bible study.
Yep, Bible study.
And you can, everyone, if you want to jump over, go to usocc.org, correct? Or Bishop
No, they
James.
can just watch my Facebook, or they can just watch it later if they want to preferably stick around with you.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's right. You're going to be sharing anyways. But when it comes to your Bible study, if that's what you're going to be doing tonight, then by all means. Thank you so much, Bishop, for being on the show. God bless. Thank you.
You have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone in the chat room, thank you so much for joining in. And as I close every single one of these shows, live life. Don't let life live you. And peace be still. Good night.